The stars had always been silent. For 200 years, humanity spread across the solar system, building cities on Mars, mining stations in the asteroid belt, and research bases on the moons of Jupiter. They sent signals into the darkness, hoping for an answer. They built telescopes and listened for voices from distant worlds. But the universe gave them nothing but silence, until the day it didn't. Lieutenant Bai Yuna sat at her station aboard the Deep Space Monitoring Platform, orbiting high above Earth. Her job was simple but boring. She watched screens filled with data from sensors pointed at the empty space beyond Neptune. Most days, she saw nothing interesting. Today was different. The readings made no sense at first. Energy signatures appeared where nothing should exist. Then more appeared. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Yuna's hands trembled as she sent the alert to Earth Command. She had trained for this moment her entire career. She had never believed it would actually happen. Within the hour, the whole world knew. Ships were coming. Alien ships. More than anyone had ever imagined possible. Admiral Kang Tae stood in the war room deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. Screens covered every wall, showing feeds from satellites and stations across the solar system. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. He had fought in the Mars uprising 20 years ago. He had commanded the fleet that stopped the Jupiter rebellion. But nothing had prepared him for this. The alien armada emerged from what the scientists called fold space. One moment, empty void. The next, 10,000 warships filling the darkness. They were massive, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls were black and angular, covered in weapons that glowed with strange energy. The message came before anyone could react. It broadcast on every frequency, in every human language, as if the aliens had studied humanity for years. Species of Earth, we are the Vorn Empire. You have been chosen for integration. Surrender your worlds, your resources, and your people. Resistance will result in extinction. You have 1 hour to respond. Admiral Kang Tae looked at the faces around him. Politicians, generals, scientists, all of them were afraid. He could see it in their eyes. What do we do? Someone asked. Before Kang Tae could answer, the screens flashed red. The aliens were not waiting for their hour to pass. The first shots struck the orbital, defense platforms around Earth. Beams of energy cut through metal and flesh like they were nothing. Station Aurora, home to 3,000 people, exploded in a ball of fire. Then Station Phoenix. Then Station Horizon. One by one, humanity's defenses died. On Mars, the story was the same. The colonial fleet tried to fight back. Captain Yoon Hana led her squadron of fighters against the alien ships. They were fast and brave, but their weapons barely scratched the enemy hulls. She watched her wingmen die. Then another. Then another. She ordered a retreat, knowing it was their only chance to survive. On Earth, people looked up at the sky and saw fire raining down. Cities burned. Millions died in the first 3 hours. The aliens showed no mercy. They did not care about civilians. They did not care about surrender signals from panicked governments. They simply destroyed in a deep command bunker. Admiral Kang Tae received report after report of destruction. His staff wanted him to surrender. They begged him to contact the aliens and accept their terms. Anything to stop the dying. Kang Tae thought about his granddaughter. She lived in Seoul. He did not know if she was alive or dead. He thought about every person on Earth, on Mars, on the colonies scattered across the solar system. He thought about what surrender would mean. Slavery, the end of everything humanity had built. He made his choice. Activate Protocol Omega, he said quietly. The room went silent. Protocol Omega was a secret known only to the highest levels of command. It was a plan created decades ago by paranoid leaders who believed that first contact might not be peaceful. They had been called crazy. They had been mocked. Now, their paranoia would save humanity. Deep in a hidden facility on Titan, one of Saturn's moons, Dr. Park Mingo received the coded signal. He was a thin man with messy hair and glasses that he constantly pushed up his nose. For 15 years, he had worked on Project Forge. Most days, he wondered if his work would ever matter. Now he knew it would. Project Forge was humanity's secret weapon. A network of satellites and ships equipped with technology that could change the war. It was not ready for full deployment, but it was their only hope. Park Minho gathered his team and gave them the news. They had work to do and very little time to do it. Back on Earth, Admiral Kang Tae prepared his message. It would be broadcast to every surviving human in the solar system. Every soldier, every civilian, every person hiding in bunkers or fleeing in ships. They needed to hear this. He stood before the camera. His uniform was wrinkled. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. But his voice was steady. People of Earth, people of Mars, people of every human colony. Today, we were attacked without warning. Today, we suffered losses that will haunt us forever. The enemy believes we will surrender. They believe we are weak. They believe we will fall. He paused, letting the words sink in. They are wrong. We are humanity. We have survived ice ages and plagues. We have survived wars and disasters. We have clawed our way from caves to the stars. And we will not bow to invaders who think they can break us with one strike. General C.O. Day watched the broadcast from his command post in the ruins of Tokyo. Around him, soldiers were digging survivors from collapsed buildings. He had lost half his forces in the first attack, but the other half was still fighting. Still ready. Captain Yoon Hana watched from her damaged fighter, drifting in the asteroid belt with what remained of her squadron. They were hurt and scared, but they were alive. And alive meant dangerous. Lieutenant Bae Yuna watched from her escape pod, fleeing the destroyed monitoring station. She had data stored in her personal device. Data that might be important. She did not know how yet, but she would find out. Admiral Kang Tae finished his message with words that would echo through history. They wanted our surrender. Instead, they shall have our war. This is not the end. This is the beginning. And we will make them regret the day they ever found us. Across the solar system, humanity heard his words. And humanity began to fight back. 3 weeks had passed since the sky burned. The Vorn Empire controlled Earth's orbit. Their ships circled the planet like hungry predators, raining fire on any city that showed signs of resistance. They had landed troops on every continent. They expected to find broken people ready to serve their new masters. They found something else entirely. Captain Yoon Hana flew her fighter through the asteroid belt, weaving between rocks the size of mountains. Behind her, 11 pilots followed in formation. They were all that remained of the once mighty Third Fleet Squadron. Their ships were damaged, held together with spare parts and hope. But they were still flying, still hunting. Contact ahead, her second-in-command reported. Vorn Supply Convoy. 8 transport ships. 2 escorts. Hannah smiled. The Vorn had a weakness they did not understand. They were too organized, too predictable. Their convoys followed the same routes at the same times. They never expected attacks from the areas they considered conquered. All wings, attack pattern Delta. Hit the escorts first. Make it fast. The human fighters burst from behind an asteroid like angry wasps. Their weapons were weak compared to Vorn technology, but they knew where to aim. Hana had spent weeks studying captured data, finding the gaps in Vorn armor. The joints, the sensor arrays, The engine ports. The first escort exploded before it could return fire. The second managed to launch fighters, but they were too slow. Human pilots could handle more speed, more sharp turns, more punishment than the Vorn expected. By the time the alien fighters formed up, half the convoy was already burning. "Grab what you can and run," Hannah ordered. Her pilots knew the drill. They latched onto supply containers, dragging them away before more Vorn ships could arrive. Food, medicine, weapons, everything humanity needed to keep fighting Dot as they fled into the darkness. Hannah allowed herself a small moment of pride. Another victory. Another day survived. On Earth, General C.O. Day walked through the tunnels beneath what used to be Seoul. The city above was ruins, but below ground, thousands of people lived and fought. They had turned subway stations into hospitals, old bunkers into armories, and forgotten tunnels into roads that the Vorn could not see. C.O. Day was 55 years old, with a scarred face and a mechanical left arm from an old war wound. He had been ready to retire before the invasion. Now he led the largest resistance movement on the planet. "Report," he said to his aide. "Cells in Europe hit 3 Vorn checkpoints last night. Africa Division sabotaged a landing zone. South American forces rescued 2,000 civilians from a processing center. Processing center. That was what the Vorn called their slave camps. They were taking humans, sorting them, preparing them for transport to distant worlds. General C.O. Day had sworn that not one more human would leave Earth in chains. And our losses? Heavy, sir. But volunteers keep coming. Every attack brings more people to us." S.E.O. Day nodded. The Vorn did not understand this. Every time they day. Troy to city, they created more fighters. Every time they killed civilians, they made more enemies. Humanity was not becoming weaker. Humanity was becoming angrier. Dot in the ruins of an old factory. Sergeant No Soon cleaned his rifle. He was young, only 24, with a round face that made him look even younger. Before the war, he had been a university student studying history. Now he was a soldier. His squad had been holding a bridge outside the city for 3 days. The Vorn wanted to cross it to reach a refugee camp hiding in the mountains. No Soon and his 30 soldiers would not let them. "They're coming again," someone shouted. No Soon moved to his position. Across the river, Vorn soldiers were advancing. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with gray skin and forearms. They wore black armor and carried weapons that could cut through concrete. There were at least 200 of them. "Hold your fire until they reach the middle," No Soon ordered. The bridge was rigged with explosives. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to make it dangerous. When the Vorn reached the center, No Soon gave the signal. The explosion sent aliens flying. The survivors tried to retreat, but human snipers picked them off one by one. By the time Vorn reinforcements arrived, No Soon and his squad had already disappeared into the tunnels. 72 hours. They held for 72 hours against an army that should have crushed them in minutes. Word of their stand spread across the resistance networks. No Soon became a symbol. Proof that humans could win. Far above the battle, aboard the Vorn command ship, Tactician Vex studied reports with growing concern. He was old for his species, with deep lines on his gray face and eyes that had seen 100 conquered worlds. But he had never seen anything like this. "The humans continue to resist," he told Overlord Keth. "Our casualties are significant." Overlord Keth sat on his throne, a massive figure draped in robes made from the skins of conquered species. He had ruled the Vorn Empire for 200 years. He had never lost a war. "They are primitives," he said dismissively. "They will break soon. With respect, Overlord, they are not breaking. They are getting stronger." Their attacks are more organized. Their tactics are evolving. They learn faster than any species we have encountered. Keth waved his hand. Then hit them harder. Show them the price of resistance. Vex bowed and left, but worry stayed in his hearts. Something was wrong. Something the Vorn had not prepared for. On a small station hidden in the outer system, Lieutenant Bay Yuna worked without sleep. She had escaped the destroyed monitoring platform with data she did not fully understand. For weeks, she had been analyzing it, looking for patterns in Vorn communications. Tonight, she found what she was looking for. The Vorn used fold space to travel between stars. It was how their fleet appeared without warning. It was their greatest advantage. But the data showed something interesting. During fold space jumps, Vorn ships were vulnerable. A specific frequency of radiation could disrupt their drives, trapping them in normal space. Yuna's hands shook as she prepared the transmission. This information had to reach the right people. It could change everything. She sent the data to Titan, to Dr. Park Min-ho and Project Forge. Then she sat back and waited. Across the solar system, the pieces were falling into place. Captain Hannah kept fighting. General Co. Day kept organizing. Sergeant No Soon kept inspiring. And now, humanity had a weapon. Admiral Kang Tae received Yuna's report in his bunker. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to feel something like hope. How long until Project Forge can use this? He asked. Weeks, came the reply. Maybe a month. Kang Tae looked at the map showing Vorn positions around Earth. A month was a long time. Many more people would die. But if they could hold on, if they could buy enough time, everything would change. Then we hold, he said. Whatever it takes, we hold. 2 months into the war, humanity was bleeding. Every day brought new losses. Cities fell. Ships burned. People died by the thousands. But still, they fought. Still, they refused to surrender. Admiral Kang Tae stood over the holographic map in his bunker, studying the positions of both fleets. The Vorn had pushed human forces back to a final defensive line around Mars. Beyond that line lay Earth, wounded but unbroken. If Mars fell, Earth would be next. They expect us to make our stand here, he said to his officers. They expect us to throw everything we have at them in one desperate battle. What choice do we have? Asked one general. If we don't stop them at Mars, we lose everything. Kang Tae allowed himself a small smile. We give them what they expect, but not what they think. The plan was dangerous. It required sacrifice, but it was humanity's only chance. 3 days later, the Battle of Mars defense line began. Admiral Kang Tae sent 3 of his best cruisers to meet the Vorn advance. They flew directly at the enemy fleet, weapons blazing, shields burning. To the Vorn, it looked like a suicide attack, the last desperate act of a dying species. Commander Rao watched from his flagship with satisfaction. The humans are finished, he told his officers. They throw away their ships in hopeless gestures. Soon, they will have nothing left. The 3 cruisers fought bravely. They destroyed dozens of Vorn fighters before falling. The last transmission from Captain Jin Woong, commander of the lead cruiser, was broadcast to all human forces. We die so others may live. Remember us. Avenge us. The Vorn celebrated their victory. They pushed forward, confident that human resistance was finally crumbling. They did not notice the signals passing between hidden ships in the asteroid field. They did not see the survivors of the human fleet regrouping at coordinates deep in the outer system. They did not understand that they had been tricked. Captain Yoon Hana watched the battle from her hiding spot among the asteroids. Tears ran down her face as she saw the cruisers die. Those were her friends, her comrades, and they had sacrificed themselves to make the Vorn believe a lie. All surviving ships, she transmitted on encrypted channels. Fall back to Rally Point 7. Maintain radio silence. The plan is working. Her squadron was smaller now. Every battle cost them pilots. But every battle also taught them something new about their enemy. The Vorn were powerful, but they were predictable. They followed rules. Humans broke rules. In the ruins of Berlin, General C.O. Day prepared for the largest operation of the Resistance. They called it Operation Ember. On a single night, every Resistance cell on Earth would attack at once. Thousands of targets. Hundreds of thousands of fighters. The Vorn would be forced to spread their forces thin, weakening their grip on every territory. Sergeant No Sung led one of the strike teams. His target was a Vorn communications center in the mountains of Korea. Without it, enemy forces in Asia would lose contact with their command ships for hours. "Are you ready?" he asked his soldiers. They nodded. Some were veterans now, hardened by months of fighting. Others were new, civilians who had picked up weapons after losing their families. All of them were afraid. All of them were determined. "Remember," No Sung said, "we are not fighting to survive. We are fighting to win. Every minute we buy, every resource we destroy, brings us closer to victory. Tonight, we show the Vorn that Earth is not theirs. Earth will never be theirs." When the attack began, it was like fire spreading across the planet. Explosions lit up the night on every continent. Vorn patrols were ambushed. Supply depots burned. Communication towers fell. For one glorious night, humanity struck back with everything they had. No Sung's team fought through Vorn defenders to reach the communication center. He lost 8 soldiers getting inside, but they planted their explosives and got out before the building collapsed. As he watched the flames rise, No Sung felt something he had not felt in months: pride. On Titan, Dr. Park Min-ho worked without rest. Lieutenant Bae Yuna's data had given him the key. Now he had to build the Lockdot Project Forge, was originally designed to be a defensive system. Satellites that could create energy shields around Earth. But with the new information about Vorn fold drives, Park Min-ho had a better idea. He modified the satellites to emit the specific radiation frequency that disrupted alien technology. If he could deploy them across the solar system, the Vorn would lose their ability to jump to fold space. They would be trapped in normal space, unable to retreat, unable to call for reinforcements. How much longer? Admiral Kang Tae asked in their daily communication. Park Min-ho pushed his glasses up his nose and sighed. 2 weeks. Maybe less if we skip testing. Skip the testing. We don't have 2 weeks. The Vorn had made their decision. Overlord Keth, frustrated by the slow progress of conquest, had authorized the deployment of their ultimate weapon. A planet killer. A ship so large, blocked out stars, carrying weapons that could crack a world in half. It was already moving toward Earth. 72 hours, Kang Tae told his staff. That's how long we have before the planet killer reaches weapons range. The room went silent. 72 hours. 3 days to save everything. Captain Yoon Hanna received the news on her ship. She gathered her pilots in the small mess hall, looking at their tired faces. Some of them were barely 20 years old. They had aged decades in the past months. "I know what you're thinking," she said. "The odds are impossible. The enemy has us outnumbered, outgunned. They have a weapon that can destroy our planet. And we have what? Damaged ships? Exhausted pilots? Hope?" She paused, letting the silence stretch. "Yes, we have hope. And that is more than the Vorn will ever understand. They have conquered hundreds of species. They have broken every enemy they ever faced. But they have never faced us. They do not know what it means to be human. They do not know that we fight harder when we are losing. They do not know that we become more dangerous when everything seems lost. She looked at each pilot in turn. They count our dead. They should count our living. Every one of us is a weapon they failed to destroy. And in 72 hours, we are going to show them what that means. Admiral Kang Tae watched the planet killers approach on his screens. It was massive, terrifying, a monument to the Vorn's power and cruelty. But power was not everything. Cruelty was not everything. Humanity had something the Vorn did not. They had nothing left to lose. And that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Prepare all forces, Kang Tae ordered. In 72 hours, we end this war. One way or another. The final hours began in silence. Across the solar system, human ships waited in darkness, powered down to avoid detection. They hid behind asteroids, inside abandoned stations, in the shadows of moons. The Vorn thought they had destroyed humanity's fleet. They were wrong. Admiral Kang Tae stood at the command center of his hidden flagship, watching the clock count down. 48 hours until the planet killer reached Earth. 48 hours until everything humanity had ever built was reduced to dust. Unless they stopped it. All units report ready, his communications officer announced. Kang Tae nodded. This was the moment. Every sacrifice, every battle, every death had led to this point. Project Forge was in position. The fleet was assembled. All that remained was to fight. Send the signal, he ordered. Let them know we are not dead. The signal went out on every frequency. A simple message that reached every Vorn ship in the system. This is Admiral Kang Tae of the United Earth Fleet. You came to our home expecting easy prey. You attacked without warning. You killed millions of our people. Today, we repay that debt. Today, you learn what it means to make enemies of humanity. Commander Raul received the message aboard his flagship and laughed. The humans threaten us? With what? We destroyed their fleet. They have nothing. Then his sensors lit up with contacts. From every corner of the system, human ships emerged. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, fighters, ships that had been hidden, ships that had been repaired in secret, ships that the Vorn had written off as destroyed. Nearly 300 vessels, painted black to blend with the void, burning toward the enemy fleet. Captain Yoon Hana led the first wave. Her squadron of fighters screamed through space at speeds that should have killed their pilots. But humans could endure what other species could not. They could push their bodies past limits that the Vorn considered impossible. All wings, target the planet killer's escorts, she commanded. We need to clear a path. The battle began with light. Energy weapons streaked through the darkness. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. Ships died on both sides, but the humans kept coming. They did not hesitate. They did not retreat. They attacked with a fury the Vorn had never seen. Commander Rao tried to organize his forces, but human tactics made no sense to him. They did not follow patterns. They did not respect formations. They flew in ways that seemed suicidal, but somehow worked. His fighters could not track them. His gunners could not hit them. What are they doing? He demanded. No species fights like this. No species did. That was the point. Captain Hana's fighter twisted through a swirl of enemy missiles, pulling turns that crushed her body against her seat. Warning lights screamed at her. Blood vessels burst in her eyes. But she stayed on target. Her missiles struck a Vorn carrier's engine section, sending the massive ship spinning out of control. That's for my squadron, she whispered. That's for everyone you killed. On Earth, General C.O. Day received word that the battle had begun. His part was coming. Hidden in the mountains of South America, humanity had kept one final secret. A ground-to-space cannon, built in pieces over decades and assembled in secret during the war. It was powerful enough to damage capital ships in orbit. It had one shot. Wait for the signal, ECO Day told his crew. We get one chance. We cannot miss. In space, Admiral Kang Tae watched the battle unfold. His fleet was taking losses. Too many losses. But they were achieving their goal. The Vorn were distracted, focused on the human ships attacking from every direction. They did not notice the satellites moving into position throughout the system. Dr. Park, Kang Tae transmitted. Now, on Titan, Park Minho entered the final command. Project Forge activated. Across the solar system, 100 hidden satellites pulsed with radiation. The frequency was specific, targeted, deadly to Vorn technology. On every alien ship, full drive systems flickered and died. Commander Raoul felt his ship shudder. Alarms blared. His officers shouted in confusion. What is happening? Full drives are offline, Commander. We cannot jump to fold space. For the first time in his long career, Raoul felt fear. The Vorn had always been able to retreat. When battles went badly, they jumped away and returned with more forces. Now, trapped in normal space, they were vulnerable. All ships, fall back to defensive positions around the planet killer, he ordered. Protect it at all costs. But falling back took time. And humanity was not giving them time. Captain Hana saw the Vorn formation breaking apart. Ships were trying to regroup, but human forces harried them at every turn. She spotted the planet killer in the distance, a massive shadow against the stars. It was still moving toward Earth, still dangerous. All bomber wings, focus on the planet killer's engines, she ordered. We need to stop that thing. The bombers attacked in waves. Vorn point defense systems cut down dozens of them, but more kept coming. Human pilots flew through walls of fire, accepting death to deliver their payloads. One by one, the planet killer's engines took damage, but it was not enough. The massive ship had too many engines, too much armor. It was slowing, but not stopping. Lieutenant Bae Yuna had been monitoring communications throughout the battle. She had found something important. The planet killer's weapons required enormous power. If it fired while its main reactor was unstable, the results could be catastrophic. Admiral, she transmitted, if we can damage their main reactor at the right moment, the planet killer will destroy itself when it tries to fire. Kang Tae understood immediately. Can we get weapons through their defenses? Not from space, but from the surface. General C.O. Day received the new targeting coordinates. The main reactor. The cannon's one shot had to hit the main reactor. Can we make that shot? He asked his gunnery officer. The officer studied the data. The angle was difficult. The range was extreme. 1,000 things could go wrong. We can try, sir. Then try. Everything depends on this. The planet killer was entering weapons range of Earth. On its bridge, the weapons officer prepared to fire. The first shot would be a demonstration. They would destroy a major city, break humanity's spirit once and for all. Weapons charged, the officer reported. Before he could fire, the ship shook violently. Alarms screamed across every system. General C.O. Day's cannon had found its target. The main reactor was damaged, destabilizing by the second. Commander Raw watched in horror as energy readings spiked beyond control. Shut down the weapons. Shut everything down. Too late. The planet killer had already begun its firing sequence. Energy meant to destroy a city fed back into damaged systems. Chain reactions rippled through the ship. Explosions tore through decks. The planet killer died in a ball of light brighter than the sun. The shockwave destroyed dozens of Vorn ships, caught too close. Human forces, warned in advance, had pulled back to safe distances. In the sudden silence that followed, Lieutenant Bae Yuna broadcast on all Vorn frequencies. Her voice was calm, but her words carried the weight of everything humanity had suffered. You came to conquer a species you considered weak. You were wrong. You cannot retreat. You cannot call for help. Your greatest weapon is gone. Now you will learn what humanity does to those who threaten her home. Overlord Keth watched from his flagship as his fleet crumbled around him. For 200 years, he had known only victory. Now, for the first time, he tasted defeat. All ships, he ordered, his voice hollow. Retreat. But there was nowhere to retreat to. The fold drives were dead. The humans were closing in from every direction. Admiral Kang Tae watched the Vorn fleet begin to surrender, ship by ship. His face showed no joy. Too many had died. Too much had been lost. But they had won. This is Admiral Kang Tae to all human forces. The enemy is defeated. Earth is saved. Across the solar system, humanity celebrated. Soldiers cheered. Civilians wept. Captain Yoon Hana slumped in her cockpit, exhausted beyond words, but finally able to rest. The war was not over, but the hardest part was done. Humanity had survived, and now they would make sure this never happened again. The silence after battle was strange. For months, the sound of war had filled every moment. Explosions, alarms, screaming. Now, there was only the quiet hum of ships and the soft voices of exhausted survivors. The Vorn fleet drifted in space, weapons powered down, waiting for judgment. Admiral Kang Tae walked through the corridors of his flagship, heading for the shuttle bay. He had not slept in 3 days. His body ached. His mind was tired. But there was one more thing he had. To do. The shuttle carried him across the void to the Vorn command ship. It was the largest vessel he had ever seen, a mountain of metal and technology that dwarfed human constructions. Months ago, the sight would have filled him with fear. Now, he looked at it and felt only grim satisfaction. Overlord Keth waited in the throne room. The alien ruler sat on his massive chair, but he did not look like a conqueror anymore. He looked old, defeated. Around him stood guards with weapons, but they made no move as Kang Tae entered with his own escort. "You came to gloat," Keth said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "No," Kang Tae replied. "I came to end this." Keth studied the human before him. For 200 years, he had conquered species across 1,000 worlds. He had broken empires, enslaved billions. He had never once imagined that he would lose to primitives who had barely left their own system. "How?" he asked quietly. "How did you this? We had every advantage. Numbers, technology, experience. You should have fallen in weeks." Kang Tae considered the question carefully. It deserved an honest answer. "You conquered hundreds of species," he said. "All of them surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. You built your entire empire on that assumption. Break them fast, break them hard, and they give up. But you never faced a species that refuses to give up. You never faced humans." Keth shook his head slowly. "We have conquered warriors before. Proud species who fought bravely. Brave is not the same as stubborn," Kang Tae said. "Brave species fight until they see they cannot win. Then they accept reality. Humans are different. We fight even when we know we cannot win. We fight because the alternative is unacceptable. You did not understand that. You could not understand it. That was your mistake." The throne room was silent for a long moment. Then Keth spoke again. "What happens now? Will you execute me? Enslave my people? Take revenge for what we did to your worlds?" Kang Tae had thought about this for weeks. The Vorn had killed millions of humans. They had destroyed cities. torn families apart. Part of him wanted revenge. Part of him wanted to make them suffer as humanity had suffered. But that part of him was not the part that would decide. "No," he said, "we are not you. We will not become what we defeated." He laid out the terms. The Vorn would withdraw all forces from human space immediately. They would pay reparations for the damage they had caused. They would share all information about other spacefaring civilizations. And they would sign a treaty promising never to attack humanity again. "If you break this treaty," Kong Tai added, "we will come for you. Not to conquer. To end. Do you understand?" Keth understood. For the first time in 200 years, the Vorn Empire had met something stronger than itself. Not stronger in ships or weapons. Stronger in will. "I accept your terms," Keth said. The war was over. 3 months later, Captain Yoon Hana stood before a memorial wall on Mars. The wall stretched for kilometers, covered with names. Every human who had died in the war. Every pilot, soldier, civilian, and child who had been lost. She found the names of her squadron members, her friends, her family. "We won," she whispered to them. "Because of you, we won." She had been promoted to admiral, the youngest in history. They wanted her to build a new fleet, one that could protect humanity from whatever else waited in the darkness between stars. She had accepted, but not for glory. For them. For everyone on the wall, Dr. Pork Mingo had become the most famous scientist in human history. Project Forge had saved Earth. His face was on news feeds everywhere. People called him a hero. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had built a weapon. A weapon that had killed. His new project was different. Defense systems. Shields that could protect colonies. Early warning networks that would give humanity time to prepare if another threat appeared. He wanted to save lives now, not take them. General Essio Day supervised the rebuilding of Earth's cities. It would take decades to repair the damage. But humans were good at building. They had rebuilt after earthquakes and floods and wars. They would rebuild after this too. Sergeant No Sung had been offered officer training. Many had told him he was a hero, a symbol of human resistance. He had turned them down. Instead, he requested assignment to the Colonial Defense Force on one of the outer moons. Why? His commander had asked. "You could have any position you want." No Sung had thought about it before answering. "Someone needs to be the first line of defense. If another enemy comes, I want to be there. I want to make sure no one goes through what Earth went through." Lieutenant Bei Yuna had discovered something important in the data she intercepted during the war. The Vorn were not the only power in the galaxy. There were other civilizations out there. Some had been conquered by the Vorn. Some were still free. Some were watching to see what would happen. Now they knew. Humanity was not a species to be conquered. Humanity was a species to be respected. And feared Admiral Kong Tai gave his final address to the United Earth Assembly 6 months after the war ended. Representatives from every human colony were present. Billions watched on screens across the solar system. He spoke of the cost. 300 million dead. Cities turned to ash. Families torn apart. He did not hide from the truth of what they had lost. He spoke of the fight. The soldiers who held impossible positions. The pilots who flew into certain death. The scientists who worked without sleep. The civilians who became warriors. Every person who had refused to surrender. He spoke of the future. Humanity was no longer alone. The galaxy knew they existed now. Other species would come. Some as friends. Some as enemies. They had to be ready. "We did not choose this war," Kong Tai said. "We did not want it. We were attacked without warning by an enemy who believed we were weak. They thought they could break us with one strike. They were wrong." He paused, looking out at the faces before him. Humans from Earth and Mars and the colonies. Young and old. Wounded and whole. All of them survivors. We are humanity. We have survived everything the universe has thrown at us. Ice ages, plagues, our own foolishness. And now, invasion. We survive because we refuse to give up. We survive because when one of us falls, others rise to take their place. We survive because together we are stronger than any force in the galaxy. His voice grew stronger as he continued. The Vorn learned what happens when you threaten our home. Other species will learn too, if they make the same mistake. We do not seek war. We do not desire conquest. But we will defend ourselves. We will protect our children. We will never bow to those who would destroy us. He straightened his shoulders, old and tired, but unbroken. They struck first. They believed that would be enough. They were wrong. We are humanity. We do not break. We do not bow. And now the galaxy knows our name. Let them remember it well. The assembly erupted in cheers. Across the solar system, humans celebrated not just victory, but survival. They had been tested by fire and emerged stronger in the darkness between stars. Other civilizations watched and listened. Some were afraid. Some were curious. Some were hopeful. A new power had risen. A species that would not be conquered. A species that fought not just to win, but because fighting was who they were. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never forget.